big things can happen if you get that mix right when artists embrace new technology. But which one is right for you, and how do you go about it? Well, we're talking to Andrew here, who has a long history of bringing emerging technology and music together. One of the prime motivators then for artists now, whatever level they're at, is to say, right, the music industry has changed, the world has changed, as we've noticed, but it really is about saying, well, you can't just, like Patrick was saying, you can't just hop on Instagram Live and do something because everyone's doing it. So is that the inherent value of trying to push the boundary and looking to do something really innovative? Because there's a risk involved,
yes,
isn't there?
Everybody wants to get noticed. So in the old days, people would talk about chartering boats to go down the canal so you could play your music in front of Virgin headquarters and be disruptive. And you would get buskers stood outside EMI headquarters as you went into work in the morning playing songs, because everybody wants to get noticed. Everybody wants to get their head over the parapet, and they want to be differentiated. And that's what starts the signal for the chain reaction, hopefully, for your career, doing something that gets you noticed. And I think, unfortunately, with the explosion in abilities for laptops and phones to create high definition video and audio, and everybody's a video editor now, and everybody's a director, everybody's a photographer now. The problem with that is similar to mp3.com coming on stream in the late 90s. Suddenly everybody was publishing audio. You still need a curatorial function and or a gimmick to get you noticed without wishing to debase the value of people's currency. Getting noticed in a world full of people empowered with extremely powerful machines means that the differentiator is either your extreme art form, so it's so extreme it grabs people's attention, or your opportunity to use something new and emerging to really nab people's imagination.
I mean, it's one thing you hear a lot is when people are talking about directions and where to go and how to communicate and how to market, it's always like, well, should I use this platform or that platform? But it's essentially what you're saying is that it's actually, that is the minimum choice, that you shouldn't be really thinking about using a platform because that platform will give you the access and the exposure you need. It's about saying, how can I be more creative, more innovative, and do something interesting and happen to use this platform?
Yeah, and I agree, because I think it is, that is the case. You need to be platform agnostic, I think, to retain your credibility. And I think you need to have access to multiple tools. And I think it's the same as being a multi-instrumentalist. If you want to maintain the mastery of your own destiny, you become like Prince and you learn as many instruments as you can. And instead of waiting for anybody else, you go in and track everything you need and do everything you need. Those analogies work very nicely in this era as well, with things like augmented reality and with things like game engines and immersive media events, because I think you have to educate yourself, just like at any point in anybody's career, about what are the tools of your trade. And there's one thing understanding a signal chain with audio, and there's another thing understanding performance and live gigs and tours. But there's another part of that, which is now beyond just the music recording studio, is what are the digital tools in my scope, and how can I use those, and which are the right ones? And the formula for that has to be, I think, discovered through experimentation. And the artists I've been working with and been very lucky to work with are arch experimenters, and even artists who are household names who've had 25, 30 years of careers. They still start small. They don't immediately go from standing start to mega production with all the bells and whistles. They compartmentalize little vignetted experiments and small, nimble ideas that can be manifested quickly. You have to, as an artist, my understanding of how artists work, and having been in the room with some fairly tremendous ones, is that they are able, like collagists, to really pull in everything. So you've got your piece of work that you're doing right now, yes, but you're looking at the extant things that are going around you as well, and you're looking at opportunities and moving parts around you and trying to coalesce those things together and bring them into a critical mass. And the talent, I think, there, and the beautiful sort of creative flair is when people can almost ride that wave of confluent events and still hone their art together and stuff, I don't want to use any 1970s television potter's wheel analogies, but it is really seeing something take shape and moving it and keeping the flow and dynamic, rather than being stuck on one critical path, because you have to be responsive as well. When you've got a hot demo or something interesting in the bag, whatever era you've been in, whether it's a 2-track thing in the 60s or it's a multi-track thing in the 70s, this keeps moving. It's the same old thing in a different wrapper, I feel, without wishing to be glib, is that you have to have the nub of the idea, the spark, the innovation, and or the riff or the melody, and or the visual language as well, to catch people's attention and to have made a statement that kind of walks out the door. You know, it doesn't matter in some ways the eccentricity of what you do, as long as the work stands up for itself. And I think that's where you have to start as an artist, to make sure you feel confident that the expression of what you're doing is strong enough, and then you can elaborate, and then you can find these different elements to bring into the collage of what you're doing in a way.
Where would you recommend people start, whether that's a technological recommendation or an ethos?
Where would they start? Well, it's a difficult question to answer, because I mean, it's, you know, it depends on your mindset. Some people are able to be very acoustic in their mindset and analog. Some people are naturally gifted with digital. I would argue, similar to having an engineer in a recording studio. In the old days, ye olde days, you would go in a studio, and as an artist, you would not necessarily know what happened with the mixing desk. You wouldn't know what happened with outboard processing and effects racks. You wouldn't know about mix downs and bouncing and this, like, you wouldn't know about those things. What you wanted was an experience that was minimal friction, where you went in, you performed, somebody stuck a microphone around your instruments, you in a booth and you record your vocals, and you came out the other end with something you thought was close to your original vision of what you wanted to do. Now, in the eccentricities of that, there was an engineer, and usually maybe a producer if you were lucky enough, or at least a studio owner who would come and oversee your production. I think that fits nicely onto the analogy for the contemporary era, because I, for instance, do not sit there with my code skills writing C++ and coding all the stuff I do. I do not do that. I have certain skills I'm good at, and certain things I have a working understanding of, but I'm not an expert in. So as a result, I will try and find myself an expert, or at least somebody who is aspiring or innovative in that area.
Is that, you know, we've talked about big name artists today, but let's think about being a non-big name artist. Is that difficult to find? But the practical, I mean, because I'm just putting myself in the mindset of an emerging artist, thinking, oh, I love making music. I really want to do something that combines 3D visuals and VR or AR or something, but I don't know where to start. I can't do that. Or even if I do, there's a learning process. Who and where should they think about reaching out to? Where are good pools of resources?
Universities and colleges. So when I was in a band and I wanted a string quartet, I went to the Royal Northern College of Music, stuck a thing on the poster board saying wanted quartet with, you know, skills at annotation and stuff. And we hooked up with a quartet, and the lead viola player was the person who listened to our ramblings and transferred them into a score, and then they played them. Very nice. I would argue that's still the same now. You can go to a local university, you can go online, and even better now because online. And there's a lot of these sort of dating apps as well, these matchmaking apps between musicians and technology companies and providers and coders. I would argue, you know, definitely universities and definitely colleges, and you'll find people who are like-minded to you, are doing maybe something in the visual medium as opposed to what you're doing in the sonic medium, and you marry those two things together. And that has been time immemorial in a lot of ways. You know, the reason a lot of these bands in the 60s ended up with these psychedelic light shows is because there's all these art college students experimenting in all the different mediums they were studying. And that makes sense still now, I think, that there's people, you have to be sociable, you have to get out there and make friends and research what's available in your own little world. But I find in most major cities, most people have arts courses and digital design and graphics and computer programming. And so instead of sitting there trying to figure out for yourself, which is admirable, but I would argue maybe figure it out enough just to be armed and dangerous to know what you need, and then extrapolate who that person is that's going to help you get to that point of having that as part of what you do.